You can still buy a house in America for less than a used car. I'm not talking about a teardown or some haunted shack with 17 structural violations. I'm talking about actual, livable homes in real towns where people work, raise families, and live normal lives. And the craziest part, most people have no idea these places exist. While everyone's stressing about six-figure down payments and mortgage rates that make your eyes water, there are 18 towns across America quietly offering land and homes so cheap it feels like someone forgot to update the prices since 1985. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. There's always a catch. I spent weeks digging into census data, crime statistics, cost of living indexes, and brutally honest Reddit threads from people actually living in these places. What I found was fascinating. These aren't ghost towns or scam listings. They're real communities with real people. And some of them are genuinely great places to live if you're willing to trade certain conveniences for financial freedom. This video is going to walk you through 18 American towns where land is shockingly affordable. Some are hidden gems that deserve way more attention. Others are affordable for very specific reasons you need to understand before packing your bags. By the end, you'll either be Googling real estate listings or feeling really grateful for wherever you currently live. Either way, you're going to see a side of America that doesn't make it into the glossy travel guides. Before we dive in, quick disclaimer. I'm not a real estate agent, financial advisor, or telling you where to move. I'm just showing you what's out there and giving you the real story, good and bad. The rest is up to you. Let's start with a place that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about housing costs. Harlingen, Texas sits deep in the Rio Grande Valley, practically neighbors with Mexico. The cost of living is low, property taxes are reasonable, and Texas has no state income tax. Plus, you're surrounded by authentic Mexican food that'll ruin every taco you've ever had anywhere else. On paper, this sounds like paradise. So why isn't everyone moving here? Well, because cheap always comes with fine print. The crime rate runs about 35% higher than the national average, with theft and car break-ins being the main issues. The job market isn't exactly booming either. Unemployment rates tend to hover above the national average, and many of the available jobs match those low housing prices with equally low salaries. One Reddit user described living in Harlingen as time traveling to 1998, except the Blockbuster still closed. The town has charm and affordability, but it lacks some of the opportunities and amenities you'd find in bigger cities. Your air conditioner will basically become your best friend, because summer here is brutal. We're talking the kind of heat where you genuinely consider if that errand can wait until October. And let's talk about the drivers for a second. I don't know what it is, but traffic laws in Harlingen seem to be treated as gentle suggestions. People will signal left and turn right. I watched someone make a U-turn into a Taco Bell drive-thru in reverse, and nobody even blinked. At this point, I'm convinced the turn signals are just decorative. But here's the thing. If you can work remotely, have a stable income from elsewhere, or don't mind the trade-offs, Harlingen offers something increasingly rare in America: the ability to actually own your home without selling your soul to a mortgage company. You'll have money left over for savings, travel, or just living your life without constant financial stress. The question you have to ask yourself is this: what's the emotional cost of affordability? You'll save money, absolutely. But you might also spend your evenings triple-checking your car locks and wondering if the nearest cultural event is just the Dollar Tree having a sale. Picture stepping outside to a warm sunrise, birds chirping, the smell of breakfast tacos drifting from a neighbor's kitchen. Then immediately dodging a rogue shopping cart rolling across the parking lot. That's Harlingen. Affordable, quirky, and unapologetically itself. And if you think Harlingen has character, wait until you see what's next. The following town somehow made weird a competitive sport. Weirton, West Virginia, is where you can buy a house for less than a new Toyota Camry, and it comes with more steel industry history than your uncle's conspiracy blog. This town used to be the kind of place where steel flowed like coffee, and high school football was basically religion. Sitting right on the Ohio River, technically part of the Pittsburgh metro area, Weirton has that classic blue-collar charm, with local diners, front porch culture, and streets that genuinely look like they were frozen in time somewhere around 1963. The median home price runs around $112,000. Sounds like a steal, right? And in many ways, it is. But here's the backstory you need to know. When the steel industry took a massive hit in the 1980s, Weirton took a punch it's still recovering from. Job growth basically flatlined. The population has been slowly declining for decades, and about 18% of residents are over 65. Great if you love bingo and community potlucks, not so much if you're looking for a thriving startup scene. Crime is relatively low, which is definitely a plus, but wages are too. The median household income sits around $45,000, and that's if you're lucky enough to have full-time work. One Redditor brutally but accurately wrote, "Weirton is where time stands still, and so does the Wi-Fi." So, what do you really get here? A town that feels genuinely quiet, safe, and nostalgic. But you better be okay with the fact that your biggest Friday night thrill might be a Sheetz run and half-off mozzarella sticks. The price tag is absolutely sweet, but the social energy is, let's say, limited. If you're someone who creates your own entertainment, loves peace and quiet, or dreams of a simpler pace of life, Weirton might actually be perfect. Weirton is the kind of place where GPS still gets confused and tells you to turn left into 1947. I counted 3 barbershops, 2 bowling alleys, and not a single Starbucks. Not one. If you want fancy coffee, your options are gas station cappuccino or making peace with black drip. Also, why does every parking lot have one random shopping cart and 0 stores nearby? It's like the shopping carts migrate here to retire. Imagine stepping outside to the distant hum of cicadas, a neighbor waving from a 1978 lawn chair, and the smell of charcoal and mothballs hanging in the air. It's peaceful. Absolutely. Until you need fast internet and find yourself Googling DSL alternatives that don't suck. But here's what nobody tells you about places like Weirton. Sometimes slow is exactly what you need. No traffic jams. No pretentious brunch spots charging $18 for avocado toast. Just neighbors who actually know your name. Community events at the VFW. And housing prices that let you breathe financially. If you thought Weirton was stuck in time, the next place throws logic completely out the window and then builds a Dollar General on top of it. Decatur, Illinois is where you can buy a 3-bedroom house for under $90,000 and still have enough left over for a year's supply of Febreze. And yes, there's a reason for that. Welcome to the soybean capital of the world. I'm not exaggerating. Decatur has more processing plants than Starbucks cups in Los Angeles. This town of about 68,000 people lives and breathes agriculture, specifically soybeans. The median home price sits around $93,000. The cost of living is 26% lower than the national average. Rent hovers below $800. On paper, this looks like a dream, but dreams in Decatur come with a faint industrial odor and a crime rate that makes you double-check your car doors even at church. Decatur's violent crime rate runs 54% higher than the US average. The job market leans heavily into manufacturing and agriculture, which is stable, but not exactly a magnet for fresh tech grads or digital nomads. And as one brutally honest Redditor put it, it's affordable, sure, just don't open your windows when ADM's cooking. That factory smell is real, folks. Depending on wind direction and what they're processing that day, your neighborhood might smell like corn syrup, soybeans, or some mysterious combination that makes you question your life choices. Here's what it really means to live in Decatur. Your mortgage is laughably low. Your air quality is, let's say, dubiously high in hints of corn processing. The social scene? Well, if you're under 40, you might find yourself hanging with retirees at the local VFW on a Friday night. And honestly, they've got better stories anyway. Decatur drivers treat stop signs like polite suggestions. I watched a guy roll through a four-way with a coffee in one hand and a chicken biscuit in the other, like he was auditioning for a farm-to-table NASCAR league. Enid, Oklahoma is one of the only cities in America where the houses are dirt cheap, and so is the dirt. Welcome to a town where tractors are loud, skies are big, and your dollar stretches further than your Wi-Fi signal. With a population just over 51,000, Enid is known for wheat, oil, and that small-town vibe where people wave at you just for having a face. The median home price runs about $128,000. Cost of living sits 17% below the national average. Rent hovers around $750 a month for a two-bedroom, assuming you're not picky about laminate floors. It's affordable, it's calm, it's got charm. But then you start noticing the quiet is a little too quiet. The job market revolves mostly around aviation and government work. If you're not flying planes or fixing pipelines, your options get pretty limited. Enid's unemployment rate hovers above 4.5%, and unless you're really into grain elevators, like really into them, excitement is pretty much on back order. Crime is fairly low. Commute times average a breezy 15 minutes. But what nobody tells you is this town runs on wind and weirdness. One Redditor perfectly captured it. Living in Enid is like being in a country song, minus the romance, plus the wind burn. You'll save a ton on housing, that's the good news. But you'll also save on entertainment because there isn't much. Think high school football games and Walmart runs. You'll have space, peace, and the kind of silence where you start naming the tumbleweeds. Enid's weather operates on two settings. Where's my hoodie? Or am I being punished? That Oklahoma wind will absolutely slap your soul and take your trash can with it. Also, why does every local coffee shop close at like 3 in the afternoon? What if I want anxiety after lunch? You end up at a gas station deciding between a 12-hour-old hot dog or a cappuccino that tastes like sadness. Picture stepping outside to golden wheat fields rippling like waves. You breathe in crisp air, hear a distant rooster, and smell diesel mixed with biscuits. Life genuinely slows down. A train rolls by. You wave. It doesn't wave back, but somehow you feel seen. Could you survive in a town where the wind has an attitude and Starbucks is 40 minutes away? Enid's got heart, wind, and the kind of small-town gossip that spreads faster than flu at a church potluck. Now let's talk about Bay City, Michigan, where you can buy a house for under $95,000. And depending on wind direction, it might smell like Cheerios or wet carpet. Welcome to the Midwest. Bay City is that underrated cousin in the Great Lakes family. Not flashy like Traverse City, not troubled like Flint. Just there, vibing with boats, breweries, and a suspicious number of antique shops. It's a waterfront town on Saginaw Bay right off Lake Huron. You get riverwalk views, charming bridges, and summer festivals where someone's definitely selling kettle corn out of a vintage camper. Cost of living runs nearly 24% below the national average. But Bay City has quirks. The job market is, well, modest. Most work revolves around manufacturing, schools, or healthcare. The remote work scene hasn't quite landed yet. Crime is a little spicier than you'd expect. Bay City's crime index ranks at 17 out of 100. Meaning it's safer than just 17% of US cities. Translation: lock your bike in your mailbox. As one local accurately posted, living in Bay City is like dating someone who's sweet until they've had one too many natty lights. You move here for the prices, stay for the lake breeze, and learn to tolerate Michigan weather's 3 moods. Too cold, slightly less cold, and weirdly humid for no reason. You'll save money but spend time Googling how to winterize everything I own, including myself. Let's talk Michigan weather for a second. Bay City has this magical ability to snow in April and thunderstorm in January, all while your neighbor's still barbecuing like nothing's happening. The roads have potholes big enough to swallow an entire Subaru. Driving here feels like Mario Kart, but with more swerving and less fun music. Honestly, I'm convinced Bay City has 2 seasons: construction and hope. Imagine stepping outside with lake air in your lungs, a seagull judging you from a lamppost, and distant polka music from the summer beer fest. You grab a pasty from a food truck, watch a pontoon cruise by, then step in a puddle that's been frozen since March. Welcome to Bay City. Fun fact, Bay City is Madonna's hometown. Even the Queen of Pop got her start somewhere with frozen sidewalks and bargain real estate. Mission: Texas sits deep in the Rio Grande Valley, where you can buy a house for under $100,000 and still have money left over for a lifetime supply of bug spray. Welcome to the tropics of Texas, where it's hot, cheap, and suspiciously quiet after 10 at night. Mission has that Tex-Mex culture, palm trees everywhere, and sunsets that could land a Netflix B-roll gig. Population hovers around 85,000 and growing steadily thanks to retirees, remote workers, and folks who love sunshine and spicy food. Sounds like a budget-friendly paradise, right? But here's what nobody tells you. Yes, it's cheap, but it's also hot. Like carry an extra shirt hot. Nearly 200 days of sunshine a year with triple-digit summers that could melt your shadow. The job market revolves mostly around agriculture, healthcare, and seasonal retail. Mission's median income sits around $50,000, manageable given the cost of living, but don't expect a booming tech hub. Crime runs below the national average, though border town politics and drug war media headlines skew perception. Locals say it's actually safer than it looks on paper. A Redditor described it perfectly. It's like living in a taco commercial with a heat advisory. Here's the trade-off. You get year-round sun, a slow pace, and housing so affordable it feels like time travel. But you also get mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds and a calendar that basically skips winter altogether. Good luck finding nightlife past 10 unless you count the H-E-B parking lot at midnight, where someone's definitely doing burnouts in a Dodge Charger. The drivers in Mission have two speeds: Casual Cruise and Fast and Furious Border Edition. I once watched a guy reverse into a Whataburger spot at Mach 3. Don't even try ordering coffee past 4 in the afternoon. Your only option is lukewarm gas station brew that tastes like sadness and old tires. Also, fire ants everywhere. It's like nature's way of reminding you who's really in charge. Picture stepping outside to golden sunlight, mariachi music drifting from a backyard party, and the smell of grilled fajitas. You wave to your neighbor, who's already sweating through his third shirt of the day. Paradise depends on your AC bill. Could you handle 100-degree heat year-round if it meant never paying over $100,000 for a house again? Now let's head to Eagle Pass, Texas, where you can buy a house for under $90,000 and literally watch Mexico from your porch. No, really, it's right there. Eagle Pass is a border town that feels like a Texas fever dream. Ranch-style houses, 100-degree heat, H-E-B grocery stores with more salsa varieties than you thought existed. Life moves slowly. Neighbors actually wave. And the culture is a flavorful mix of Texan pride and Mexican heritage. Median home price sits around $89,000. Rent runs $650 to $750 for a two-bedroom, assuming you're okay with the occasional mariachi concert next door. Cost of living is 23% below the national average. Population holds steady around $30,000 with a Walmart supercenter and 3 Whataburgers to prove it's legit. But don't let the affordability fool you. Eagle Pass sits right on the US-Mexico border, which means it's featured in every cable news panic montage since 2016. Still, crime isn't nearly as bad as you'd think. The crime rate actually runs lower than Austin, and way lower than places like St. Louis or Baltimore. A 2023 report showed Eagle Pass ranks safer than 60% of US cities its size. So yeah, perception is definitely not reality. One local summed it up perfectly. Everyone thinks we're in danger, but the only real threat is forgetting your sunscreen. You get heat, border culture, and dirt-cheap housing, but you also get weird stares when you tell people where you live. The emotional trade-off. You'll spend less money, but way more time explaining to relatives that Eagle Pass isn't the set of a post-apocalyptic Netflix series. Let's talk about Eagle Pass drivers. I watched a guy do a 3-point turn in the middle of a Dairy Queen drive-thru, and nobody even honked. Also, can we normalize air conditioning outside? Because your car turns into a microwave every afternoon. Leave a phone on the dash, and you're basically baking it at 350 degrees. Imagine waking up to the smell of breakfast tacos, warm wind off the Rio Grande, and cumbia playing faintly in the distance. You step outside with dusty boots and sunglasses, and the whole town feels like a Western with Wi-Fi. Springfield, Illinois, is where you can buy a house for under $110,000, visit Abraham Lincoln's tomb, and still potentially get mugged near a Taco Bell at 3 in the afternoon. Springfield isn't just Illinois' capital. It's oddly obsessed with Lincoln. Home to historic sites, state politics, and enough corn-based events to last you a decade. You'd think being the capital would mean big city energy, But Springfield somehow feels like your uncle's backyard barbecue stretched across 60 square miles. It's affordable, full of history, and technically, you could bump into the governor at a local gas station. But here's the twist. Springfield has big city crime in a town with mid-sized energy. The violent crime rate nearly doubles the national average. Property crime, yikes. A 2022 report ranks Springfield as one of the most dangerous cities in Illinois, and that includes Chicago. One local put it perfectly on Reddit. It's Lincoln lore and lock your doors. So what's the emotional price of bargain housing in Springfield? You get charm, history, and affordability, but also budget cuts, potholes, and neighbors who treat fireworks like a year-round personality trait. You save on your mortgage, but might spend extra on home security and very specific insurance policies. You haven't truly lived in Springfield until your GPS takes you the long way, because a street's closed for a political protest and hot dog cookout happening simultaneously. The weather operates on extremes. Winter until it's suddenly 85 degrees and humid like you've been wrapped in a wet newspaper. You can literally sweat and shiver in the same afternoon. Picture stepping outside your vintage home with squeaky screen doors and weirdly charming wallpaper. You smell barbecue from 2 blocks away. It's warm, but not yet unbearable. A guy walks his dog past you wearing cargo shorts in February. Life's simple, easy, until the sirens start again near 2nd and Monroe. Could you live in a town where Abraham Lincoln is the top tourist attraction and your neighbor owns 3 pet raccoons? Now we're heading to Warren, Michigan, where you can buy a home for less than a year of rent in Brooklyn. Just don't ask what happened to the last 3 houses on the block. Warren is Michigan's 3rd largest city, but don't let that title fool you into expecting anything particularly exciting. It's a blue-collar, no-frills suburb just north of Detroit. Think auto plants, strip malls, and sidewalks that end abruptly in grass. Median home price sits around $99,000. Rent averages $850 to $950 for a 2-bedroom. Cost of living runs 20% below the national average. If you've ever worked in auto manufacturing, this place might feel like Mecca. Warren's home to the General Motors Tech Center, a few defense contractors, and more now hiring signs than working crosswalks. But here's the kicker. Warren's got one foot in suburbia and the other firmly planted in post-industrial purgatory. Violent crime runs 47% higher than the national average. Property crime also elevated, mostly petty stuff like stolen bikes, broken windows, and mysteriously missing porch packages. The job market's solid for trades and factory work, but anything outside that, get ready to commute. One Redditor nailed it. Warren is where dreams come to get a decent deal on tires and kind of stay there. You get affordability, fast food everywhere, and neighbors who can jumpstart your car in under 30 seconds. But you also get winters that slap, potholes that bite, and a Target parking lot that somehow always smells like antifreeze. You'll spend less money, but possibly more on front-end alignments and Ring doorbells. Let me paint the picture. You're in line at Tim Hortons at 7:30 in the morning. It is snowing sideways, and the guy behind you is loudly yelling into a Bluetooth headset about brake pads. The coffee is hot, the roads aren't plowed, and half your neighborhood drives 2004 Impalas that look like they've seen some things. Warren is the only place where under $100K feels both like a bargain and a dare. Picture stepping out into a chilly Michigan morning. The air smells like salt, exhaust, and coffee from the speedway down the street. You've got space, a garage, and neighbors who shovel your driveway unasked, but also tell you about the raccoon infestation with zero alarm. Warren has more auto parts stores than public parks, which honestly explains a lot about the culture here. Would you live in a place where houses are cheap, snow is deep, and the neighborhood watch is just that one guy named Chuck? Flint, Michigan is one of the few places in America where homes are cheaper than your college textbooks. And yes, you've definitely heard of it, just probably not in a tourism brochure. Flint is infamous. Say the name, and people immediately think water crisis. And honestly, that's fair. But what if I told you the city is quietly rebuilding, and housing is so affordable it feels fake? Median home price sits at $69,000. Cost of living runs 27% below the national average. Rent hovers around $700 a month. The job market focuses mostly on healthcare, education, and city contracts, so don't expect Silicon Valley vibes. Crime. Let's be real. Flint's reputation is rough, and not just because of the water. Violent crime runs 4 times the national average. Property crime rate also through the roof. We're talking top 10 in the US for cities where you definitely want a security system. But here's the twist. Some parts of Flint are becoming weirdly cool. Artists, developers, and actual hipsters are moving into renovated buildings downtown. There's even a Flint mural tour, and a surprisingly good coffee scene developing. So what's the deal? You can snag a whole house for less than a Tesla down payment. But you're signing up for citywide trust issues, outdated infrastructure, and that lingering national punchline status. You save a ton, but also inherit the ghosts of 2008 and possibly a feral cat colony. Flint's the only place I've seen a coffee shop, a boarded-up liquor store, and a bail bonds billboard, all on the same street. And let's talk potholes. These aren't potholes, they're portals. I hit one so deep, I thought I was going to end up in Detroit wearing 2003 flip-flops. Also, some streets still don't have working streetlights. It's like Mad Max Rust Belt edition. Imagine walking out your front door to a quiet, tree-lined street. You hear a lawnmower, smell someone grilling kielbasa 2 houses down. Your home costs less than your cousin's Prius, and your mortgage payment equals her Spotify family plan. It's peaceful until your neighbor's pit bull decides to freestyle bark at nothing again. Flint has more murals than working public fountains. And somehow that's not even a joke. Would you live in a city that's turning a comeback story into real estate gold? Or is that still too risky? Let's head to Toledo, Ohio, where you can buy a house for $80,000, walk to a nationally ranked zoo, and still trip over a broken sidewalk next to an abandoned Blockbuster. Toledo, the Glass City. Once the industrial pride of the Great Lakes, now a fascinating low-cost Frankenstein of grit, growth, and surprisingly good food. This is where old-school Midwestern toughness meets just enough redevelopment to keep things interesting. Median home price runs $115,000. Rent averages $750 to $850 a month. Cost of living sits 22% below the national average. Perks include a world-class zoo, a minor league hockey team, and the kind of neighbor who helps you shovel snow, then offers you chili. But let's keep it real. Toledo has neighborhoods that are thriving, and others where you want to keep your car running while checking the mailbox. Violent crime rate runs about twice the national average, and property crime is even more common. Not life-threatening, just annoying enough to make you lock your garbage can. The job market focuses mostly on education, healthcare, and blue-collar work. You won't get rich, but you might actually own something. As one Redditor said, Toledo is that weird middle-child city that's cool if you treat it right, but will absolutely throw a brick through your window if you don't. Here's the deal. You'll spend less on housing than most people spend on gym memberships. But you might inherit weird neighbors, surprise flooding, and a city still figuring out what it wants to be when it grows up. Let's talk Toledo drivers. Every yellow light here is a challenge, not a suggestion. I watched someone U-turn in the middle of a school zone while eating ribs. And the weather. It snows when the forecast says sun. It rains during parades. Summer is just mosquito season with humidity, so thick you can chew it. Imagine stepping outside your fully paid off $90,000 house. There's a slight chill in the air, the smell of fresh dough from the Polish bakery down the street, and the sound of someone starting a snowblower 3 blocks away. It's calm, it's real, and it's probably snowing sideways by dinner. Toledo is safer than Flint, but sketchier than Springfield, which is impressive considering Springfield has its own governor drama. Would you buy a house in a town where the zoo is pristine, but your block might be on the next before episode of HGTV? St. Louis, Missouri, where you can buy a house for $60,000, but it might come with a free bullet hole and a neighbor named Sketchy Steve. St. Louis is a city of contrasts. Gateway Arch, blues music, baseball, toasted ravioli, and also some of the lowest housing prices in any major U.S. metro. The job market is surprisingly solid in healthcare, education, and aerospace. But here's the catch. Violent crime rate runs 420% higher than the national average in some neighborhoods. Yeah, not a typo. St. Louis has neighborhoods that feel like Brooklyn and others that feel like a post-apocalyptic video game. It's not just the wrong side of the tracks. In some areas, the whole track is wrong. Still, there's an artsy, resilient energy here. The food scene is wildly underrated. Architecture showcases beautiful old brick homes from the 1800s if they haven't collapsed yet. A local once said on Reddit, "In STL, the house might be $70,000, but your Ring camera better be $300. Here's the deal. You can save a ton living in St. Louis, but you have to do your homework. Buy in the wrong zip code, and you're signing up for sirens, smashed windows, and lawn chairs permanently fused to front porches. Buy in the right neighborhood, and you're laughing all the way to the bank, sipping $3 craft beer on your private porch, with equity building faster than your Amazon packages disappear." Let's talk about St. Louis drivers. I've seen people make left turns from the right lane while texting. Yellow lights are more like suggestions. And don't even try to park downtown, unless you're okay with creative bumper arrangements and a parking meter that only takes quarters from 1996. Imagine sitting on your front steps at sunset. The brick is worn warm behind your back. Cicadas hum in the air. A Cardinals game echoes faintly from a neighbor's radio. You've got a $90,000 house, a decent job, and enough leftover cash to finally stop sharing Netflix passwords. Until a fireworks show on a Tuesday goes off 2 blocks away, and you remember where you are. St. Louis has cheaper homes than Des Moines, but 3 times the chances your porch furniture gets stolen. Would you risk higher crime for low rent and killer barbecue? Now let's talk about Detroit, Michigan, where you can literally buy a house for $1. Yes, a real home for less than a bottle of Fiji water. Detroit, the Motor City. Once the global hub of horsepower and assembly lines, now a place where entire blocks are priced like vending machine snacks. But underneath the ghost town headlines, there's a pulse. A weird, gritty, defiant pulse. Median home price sits around $66,000. Cost of living runs nearly 30% below the national average. Rent roughly $950 a month for a decent 2-bedroom. Crime is still rough. One of the highest violent crime rates in the country. But here's the upside. Major investment in tech, mobility, and real estate, especially downtown. Detroit's not dead. It's just on its 3rd reboot, like a gritty Netflix series that keeps changing lead actors. Downtown's seen a huge facelift. Tech startups, trendy lofts, boutique coffee shops named things like Clutch and Grind. But 2 blocks over, you're in Fallout 4. A local on Reddit said, "Detroit's like dating someone who's in therapy. They're not okay, but they're working on it." The emotional math here is wild. You get a backyard, garage, basement freedom, but also you might need bars on your windows and a second backup generator. You'll feel rich on paper until your Wi-Fi goes out, because someone stole copper from the pole again. But hey, if you're bold, scrappy, or just don't care what your in-laws think, Detroit could be the hustle capital of your dreams. Can we talk about Detroit roads? It's like the city was designed by someone playing whack-a-mole with a jackhammer. You're not driving. You're dodge rolling between potholes. I saw a Prius disappear into one. Gone. Vanished. If you ever wondered where Atlantis went, check I-94 during spring thaw. Picture this. You buy a home for $5,000. Paint it up. Plant tomatoes in the backyard. The air smells like old records and grilled kielbasa. You ride your bike past murals, Motown blasting in your earbuds. You feel like a pioneer until you get chased by a raccoon the size of a bulldog. Detroit will break your heart and fix it in the same week. Just don't ask it to plow the street. Detroit homes are cheaper than RVs in Arizona, but you'll need an urban survival guide and possibly a tetanus booster. Moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the average home costs less than a year of tuition at most private colleges, and the houses don't give you student debt trauma. Pittsburgh went from Steeltown, USA, to hosting Google, Uber, and Duolingo. But despite the glow-up, the cost of living somehow never got the memo. Median home price runs around $175,000. Cost of living nearly 10% below the national average. Average rent hits $1,150 for a two-bedroom, cheaper than the studio I once rented in a building that leaned. The job market's growing fast in tech, healthcare, and robotics. Crime is moderate, but varies block to block, like a game of safe or sketchy. Pittsburgh's secret weapon, it's underrated. Big-time sports teams, gorgeous parks, world-class universities, and yet no one outside the Rust Belt seems to notice. But then there's Pittsburgh's weird weather. Rain, fog, snow, and sun, often in the same afternoon. And the hills, let's just say GPS here gives up and says, good luck. A local Redditor nailed it. If you've never backed down a 45-degree icy driveway in reverse at 6 in the morning, have you really lived here? The trade-off? You get charm, culture, and a backyard, but you also inherit the world's most confusing street grid and a skyline that's stunning until it disappears in fog. Still, this is one of the few US cities where you can afford to live and have money left over to furnish your home, even if that furniture is all black and gold. Can we address Pittsburgh drivers? Merging here is a form of telepathy. There are no blinkers, only vibes. Add in potholes that could swallow a compact car, and you're basically in Mario Kart, Rust Belt Edition. I once watched a guy dodge a traffic cone, hit a snow pile, and end up parked diagonally outside Sheetz. Imagine a cool fall morning, mist rising over the Allegheny River. You grab coffee from a 100-year-old diner, cross one of the 400 bridges, and your biggest problem is a parking meter with a personality disorder. Not bad for a city where the skyline looks like a postcard and rent feels like it's 2009. Pittsburgh has more bridges than Venice and probably more potholes than the moon. Let's head south to Memphis, Tennessee, where you can buy a house for less than the cost of a used Tesla, and only one of them doesn't explode in the rain. Memphis, birthplace of rock and roll, ribs that'll ruin your diet, and home prices so low, Zillow might ask if you're joking. It's the kind of city that makes you think, wait, what's the catch? Median home price sits around $118,000, cost of living about 17% below the national average. Rent stays under $1,000 for a two-bedroom, assuming your landlord isn't trying to retire early. The job market focuses on logistics, healthcare, and FedEx headquarters. Not exactly Silicon Valley, but jobs exist. Crime? High. Like maybe keep your Amazon packages at a friend's house high. Now here's the twist. Memphis has soul, literally and figuratively. The music scene is rich, the food is criminally good, and so is some of the actual crime. But there's something nobody tells you. Many of the most affordable neighborhoods are packed with character, history, and neighbors who actually talk to each other. Living here is a gamble, but not a blind one. You trade glam for grit. And if you're cool with humid summers, rusty air conditioners, and drivers who treat red lights like suggestions, you could actually build equity instead of burning it in rent. Let's talk Memphis drivers for a second. Imagine Grand Theft Auto, but nobody's wearing seatbelts, and everyone thinks a turn signal is a rumor. I once saw someone doing donuts in a Walmart parking lot while a cop just waved. Memphis, where the houses are cheap and the music is free, but your tires might not be. Now we're heading to McAllen, Texas, where you can get a house for under $100,000 and still have enough left over to start a taco truck empire. McAllen isn't just where your grandma winters, it's where your money multiplies. Located along the US-Mexico border, this sun-soaked city might just be America's most affordable small city with Wi-Fi. Median home price runs around $98,000. Cost of living roughly 22% below the national average. Rent for a two-bedroom about $850s, aka the price of brunch in LA. Crime rate surprisingly low for a border city. And yes, they've got Target. Calm down. But here's the thing. McAllen has this weird duality. On one hand, it's got palm trees, high walkability, and some of the best healthcare infrastructure in the state. On the other, the economy's been described as stable-ish. Like your cousin who still drives for DoorDash, but swears he's investing in crypto. A Redditor wrote, "Living in McAllen is like being in Texas without the ego. People say hi. It's almost unsettling. Sure, you'll save money, but you might also sweat through 7 shirts before noon. And let's not talk about the mosquitoes unless you're into therapy. What nobody tells you is McAllen isn't just cheap, it's peaceful. Too peaceful. Like Hallmark movie set meets Texas humidity peaceful. Okay, McAllen weather. It's like the sun took it personally. You don't walk to your car. You sprint, hoping the soles of your shoes don't melt. AC units basically go to war for you daily. And the humidity? Let's just say if you don't own a dehumidifier here, you're just drinking your air. Picture this. A sleepy afternoon. You're rocking in a front porch chair. It's 5 o'clock. The tamale truck just honked down the block. The air smells like lime and tortillas, and you just paid off your house in cash. That's McAllen, calm, slow, oddly wholesome. Waycross, Georgia, where you can buy a 3-bedroom house for less than the cost of your iPhone storage upgrade. Welcome to Waycross, a sleepy, pine-swathed town at the edge of the Okefenokee Swamp. The kind of place where Waffle House is basically City Hall, and your neighbor is a gator named Earl. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around $85,000. Rent for a 2-bedroom about $700. Cost of living 25% below the national average. The job market is, let's say, polite. Not booming, not dead. Crime rate moderate, unless you're allergic to banjos and raccoons. But then there's the part nobody puts on postcards. The biggest employer in Waycross is the railroad. And when the trains aren't blaring, the mosquitoes are. Downtown looks like The Walking Dead, but with more Dollar Generals. Still, the town's trying. There's a brewery, a few solid barbecue joints, and every person will call you Hon before 9 in the morning. So yes, if you want to live like a king on a lawnmower budget, Waycross is a goldmine, but you trade convenience for calm. This is not a 2AM. Uber Eats and Pilates town. It's a front porch, crickets, and the occasional possum in your trash town. You ever walk outside and instantly feel like you've been shrink-wrapped in humidity? That's Waycross in July. Your air conditioner doesn't run, it screams. And the bugs? You haven't known fear until you've seen a Georgia mosquito make eye contact mid-hover. Waycross is where your house might come with a garage, a storm shelter, and an uncle named Big Jim, all included. Would you rather live in a tiny apartment in LA or own a full house in Waycross with a porch swing and wild hog sightings? Now let's talk about Hermitage, Pennsylvania, where you can buy a house for the price of a used Subaru and still have enough left over for a snowblower and 8 jugs of Sheetz coffee. Hermitage sounds like a rustic retreat in the Alps, but plot twist, it's actually tucked into the snow belt of Western PA, where the vibes are cozy, slow, and unbothered by basically everything. Locals love their backyards, front porches, and parking lots so wide you could land a small aircraft on them. Median home price just under $90,000. Cost of living 20% lower than the national average. Job market driven by healthcare, education, and manufacturing. Crime low enough that a loose raccoon makes the paper. Quality of life, slow-paced, safe, with just enough small-town weird to keep things interesting. But then you realize Hermitage is kind of like your grandma's attic. Quiet, oddly charming, but filled with things that haven't moved since 1994. Don't expect trendy cafes or high-speed anything. Wi-Fi here takes a breath before it loads your memes. And the weather? Let's just say Hermitage has a PhD in snow. Living in Hermitage is financially chill. Your mortgage is less than a Starbucks barista's weekly tips. But socially, you better like your neighbors because they will talk to you daily, possibly while snow blowing your driveway uninvited. Every traffic light here lasts a full Netflix intro. There's one mall. It's technically open, but it feels haunted. And good luck finding a place open after 9 p.m. This town folds up faster than a lawn chair after a family reunion. Imagine waking up to silence. Not the eerie kind, the peaceful kind. The snow is fresh, untouched. You sip hot cocoa on your front porch, wrapped in plaid like it's a Hallmark movie. Then you realize your neighbor has already cleared your sidewalk again. You don't even know his name. Welcome to Hermitage. Some towns are asleep. Hermitage is in a full-blown REM cycle with a weighted blanket and no alarm. Our final stop is Platte City, Missouri, where you can buy a house for under $105,000, which is either a dream come true or a Midwest simulation glitch. Platte City sounds like it should be in an old western. You half expect someone to challenge you to a duel outside the local Casey's, but really, it's a peaceful little pocket just north of Kansas City. Quiet streets, American flags, and at least one neighbor who owns 3 lawnmowers and somehow uses all of them. Median home price runs $130,000 to $160,000, depending on which side of Main Street you land on. Cost of living 14% below the national average. Crime rate lowish, not zero, but mostly just porch pirate drama. Job scene. You're 25 minutes from Kansas City, which is either a perk or a punishment depending on traffic and caffeine levels. Quality of life. Think starter pack for raising kids, schools, parks, and sports leagues for days. But then you realize this is a town where going out means Sonic and maybe the Dollar General if you're feeling spicy. It's calm, yes, but also weirdly isolated. One trip to Target? That's a journey. Like pack snacks. So, there you have it. 18 American towns where land is practically free and housing costs feel like they're stuck in a time warp. Some of these places are hidden gems waiting to be discovered. Others are affordable for very specific reasons that might not work for everyone. But they're all real. They're all out there. And they're all offering something increasingly rare in modern America. The chance to own your own home without selling your soul to a mortgage company. The question is, which trade-offs are you willing to make?